What if the greatest scene in all of cinema wasn't about explosions, superheroes, or special effects, but about silence, conviction, and the weight of a single word? In Kingdom of Heaven, a film filled with epic battles and sweeping landscapes, there is one moment that outshines them all. The moment when a lone knight, stripped of everything, stands before an unstoppable army and asks a question that still echoes today. What is Jerusalem worth? The answer? A single word. And that word changes everything. This isn't just a movie scene. It's philosophy. It's history. It's cinema at its purest. Because in that moment, when Balian of Ibelin surrenders Jerusalem to Saladin, we're not just watching a knight and a sultan negotiate. We're witnessing two civilizations, two faiths, two visions of humanity clash and yet find respect in the ashes of war. And what makes it the greatest scene isn't the swordplay or the bloodshed, it's restraint. It's power hidden in quiet dialogue. It's Ridley Scott proving that cinema isn't about noise. It's about meaning. If you've never been here before, you're right on time. Hit subscribe and let's uncover what was buried. The historical backdrop. The 12th century was an age defined by blood and belief. Jerusalem, a city no larger than a provincial town, was the center of the world. To Christians, it was where Christ died and rose again. To Muslims, it was the site of the prophet's night journey. And to Jews, it was the eternal city of David and Solomon. It was a city built on stone but fought for like it was made of gold. For nearly a century, crusading knights from Europe had held it, carving a fragile Christian kingdom out of Muslim lands. But that kingdom was always precarious. Surrounded, undermanned, politically fractured. And beyond its fragile walls, a new power had risen. Saladin ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, Saladin. Unlike many rulers of his age, Saladin was not remembered for cruelty, but for mercy. He united the Muslim world, disciplined his armies, and, most importantly, believed Jerusalem must be restored, not through massacre, but through justice. In 1187, Saladin struck. At the Battle of Hattin, his forces annihilated the Crusader Knights, capturing their king and shattering their armies. With the road to Jerusalem open, the holy city braced for siege. Inside its walls, tens of thousands of civilians waited in terror. And at the heart of this fear stood a man who was not born a lord, nor bred for command. Balian of Ibelin, a blacksmith from France who, through blood, fortune, and faith, found himself carrying the fate of Jerusalem on his shoulders. It is here, in this desperate moment of history, where an ordinary man faces an extraordinary decision, that Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven finds its most timeless truth. Not in the clash of armies, not in the roar of battle, but in a single exchange of words. Ridley Scott's vision. When Kingdom of Heaven released in 2005, it was misunderstood. Critics called it muddled. Audiences were confused. And what could have been Ridley Scott's defining historical epic seemed destined to fade as a flawed curiosity. But what many didn't know was that the film had been gutted. Fox executives had demanded a shorter, faster version, cutting nearly an hour of story. Entire character arcs vanished. Political intrigues disappeared. The story of Jerusalem became just another medieval sword-and-sandal epic. The result? Hollow spectacle. But Ridley Scott knew. He had not made a failure. He had made a masterpiece, only shackled. When the director's cut was released on DVD, the film transformed. It wasn't just longer. It was whole. The story of Balian, of Baldwin the Leper King, of Sibylla, and of Saladin now had weight, rhythm, and soul. The director's cut was no longer about battles. It was about ideas, about faith and doubt, about power and mercy, about what it means to defend something greater than yourself, not with the sword, but with honor. Ridley Scott had always been fascinated with history, but more than that, with myth. In Gladiator, it was Rome. In Kingdom of Heaven, it was Jerusalem. But unlike Gladiator, which gave audiences easy catharsis and revenge, Kingdom of Heaven gave them something harder. Something unsettling. It asked, what is worth killing for? And even more, what is worth dying for? At the center of this question lies the greatest scene in all of cinema. A moment where violence could have triumphed, where slaughter would have written the tale, but where mercy, against all odds, became the mightiest weapon of all. The build-up to the scene. The story of Kingdom of Heaven is not a tale of triumph, but of loss. Every step toward the legendary moment at Jerusalem's gates is carved in sacrifice. First, there is King Baldwin IV, the leper king, a man whose body betrayed him, but whose spirit carried the weight of an entire kingdom. Behind his silver mask, Baldwin was more than a monarch. He was an idea, a fragile hope that Christians and Muslims might live in peace. But hope is mortal. Baldwin dies, and with him, the dream of coexistence begins to rot. Into this void steps Guy de Lusignan, hungry for power, reckless, eager for blood. He seizes the throne through his marriage to Sibylla, and in doing so, sets the stage for war. Meanwhile, Sibylla herself is torn between duty and despair. Her marriage is a prison. Her child, in the director's cut, suffers a cruel fate, robbing her of the one anchor left in her collapsing world. Her tragedy deepens the shadows of Jerusalem. And then there is Balian of Ibelin, a man who never sought greatness. He was a blacksmith, not a kingmaker, but destiny dragged him into the heart of history. When Jerusalem stands on the edge of annihilation, it is Balian who takes command. Not out of ambition, not out of desire for glory, but because there was no one else. The drums of war echo as Saladin, the great sultan of Egypt and Syria, advances upon the city. An army vast as the desert sands. Tens of thousands march beneath his banners. The ground trembles beneath their steps. Inside Jerusalem, only a few thousand remain. Men, women, children, the last defenders of a holy city. This is the crucible. This is the stage upon which the greatest scene is forged. For what is greatness in cinema, if not the fusion of story, character, and fate into one moment that cannot be forgotten? The gates will soon open, but not yet. First, the siege must come. And the siege of Jerusalem is not only a clash of steel, it is a clash of philosophies, of worlds colliding under banners of faith, ambition, and survival. The build-up to the scene, the siege of Jerusalem. The walls of Jerusalem rise like stone sentinels against the endless desert, but within, the people know the truth. Walls alone cannot save them. Saladin has come. His banners unfurl like waves across the horizon, black, green, gold, symbols of unity and divine purpose. His army stretches further than the eye can see, a tide of warriors, cavalry, and siege machines. They are disciplined, patient, and unshakable. Inside the city, Balian of Ibelin surveys his defenses. He is no king, no chosen leader, just a knight reluctantly forged from the ashes of grief. Yet in this desperate hour, the people look to him. The people's desperation. The air is thick with dread. Food supplies dwindle by the day. Water is rationed. Mothers cradle their children, whispering prayers as arrows whistle over the battlements. Every sunrise, another funeral. Every night, the stars are drowned out by the fire of catapults. But in that suffering, something unexpected stirs. Unity. For once, Jerusalem is not divided by creed. Christians, Muslims who remained, Jews, all are huddled together within the city's walls, bound by the singular instinct to survive. Balian's leadership. Balian walks among them, not as a lord above men, but as one of them. He raises no false hope. He makes no promises of miracles. Instead, he tells them the truth. We cannot defeat Saladin in open battle, but we can make him pay dearly for the city. And perhaps that will be enough. His words don't ignite cheers. They ignite resolve. A grim acceptance that survival may not come, but dignity can remain. The siege itself. Then the storm begins. Saladin's siege engines roll forward, their massive frames groaning as they hurl stones the size of boulders against the ancient walls. Towers splinter. Dust fills the lungs. The city shakes with every impact. Arrows blot out the sun. Screams mingle with the clash of steel. Fires consume homes. Families scatter. Still, the defenders hold. 4 days, then weeks, Balian organizes sorties to sabotage siege towers, leading men into fire and chaos himself. At one point, ladders swarm the walls, and Balian, sword in hand, fights alongside common soldiers, his armor battered, his voice hoarse from shouting commands. He is not untouchable. He bleeds. He stumbles. He falters. But each time he rises, the defenders rise with him. And Saladin, watching from his command tent, takes note. The human cost. But courage has its price. Corpses line the streets. Disease spreads in the heat. The smell of death is everywhere. Mothers bury their children in silence. And yet, still, the people fight. It is no longer about victory. It is about meaning, about showing the world that Jerusalem, though doomed, will not fall without honor. The moment before. Finally, the inevitable comes. The walls crumble. Breaches open. The defenders are exhausted, their arms trembling, their spirits breaking. Balian knows the truth. The city cannot last another day. So he makes a choice. A choice that will echo not only in the story, but in cinematic history. He requests a parley, a meeting with Saladin himself. And thus, the stage is set for the greatest scene in all of cinema. The scene itself, the parley between Balian and Saladin. The city is broken. Smoke curls from the rooftops. Rubble litters the streets. The cries of the wounded echo through the holy stones of Jerusalem. Balian, weary, armor scorched and dented, his face lined with exhaustion, prepares himself for the meeting. He does not ride as a conqueror, nor kneel as a beggar, but stands as a man carrying the weight of every soul inside the walls. The silence before. Saladin's camp is ordered, calm, almost serene compared to the chaos within the city. His soldiers kneel in prayer, their foreheads touching the earth. The rhythm of devotion fills the air. It is a stark contrast. Inside the walls, despair. Outside, discipline and faith. When Balian arrives, the tension is palpable. Here is the man who led a doomed defense, who bloodied Saladin's army far longer than expected. A knight with no crown, no title of king, but who commands respect nonetheless. Saladin greets him not with mockery, but with curiosity. The dialogue breakdown. Balian. I am Balian of Ibelin. I defend the people of Jerusalem. His voice is raw, but steady. There is no arrogance in it, no pleading, only duty. Saladin measured, calm. We know who you are. You are not the king. Saladin could dismiss him as nothing, a pretender, a mere knight. But there is an edge in his words, almost admiration. This man has held Jerusalem longer than most kings could have. Balian, with quiet defiance. I am the man in charge. A simple line, yet in it is the essence of his character. He is not chosen by bloodline, nor divine right, nor prophecy. He is chosen by necessity, by the suffering of the people, by responsibility that no one else would bear. This line is not cinematic flair, it is a philosophy. It declares that leadership is not about crowns, but choices. The stakes of the parley. Saladin leans back, his face unreadable. He has the power to end it all, to massacre the city as retribution for the Crusaders' atrocities decades earlier. It would be easy. It would be expected. But Balian dares to challenge him. Balian, every man, woman, and child in this city will die before we surrender. And they will take many of your men with them. You will have nothing but corpses to rule over. The words hang heavy in the desert air. It is not bravado, it is truth. The defenders have nothing left to lose. For the first time, Saladin truly studies this night before him. Not a king, not a prophet, just a man who refuses to bow. The turning point. And then comes the question, a moment that crystallizes the scene into cinema legend. Balian, what is Jerusalem worth? It is a dangerous question. It is not asked in arrogance, but as a test of Saladin, of faith, of history itself. Saladin pauses. His eyes lower. His breath slows. He is not a man answering another man. He is a man answering history. Finally, he replies. Saladin softly. Nothing. A pause. Saladin with gravity. Everything. Why this line matters. In 2 words, the entire philosophy of the Crusades, of faith, of empire, of mankind's obsession with holy places is distilled. Jerusalem is nothing but stone and sand. A city like any other. And yet it is everything, because it holds the dreams, blood, prayers, and ambitions of billions. It is at once meaningless and priceless. It is at once empty and full. And in that paradox, Ridley Scott delivers the most powerful cinematic statement on religion and war ever filmed. The resolution. Saladin does not slaughter the city. Instead, he offers safe passage. The people of Jerusalem, those who survived, are spared. A conqueror shows mercy. A knight, who is not a king, saves thousands. And a war that could have ended in rivers of blood instead ends in dignity. The cinematic impact. The scene closes with quiet dignity. There is no cheering, no grand trumpet. Just weary men, humbled kings, and the acknowledgement that greatness can exist without victory. It is not the fall of Jerusalem that echoes through cinema history. It is this moment, 2 men, bound by faith, pride, and humanity, speaking truth across the gulf of war. Character arcs, Balian, Saladin, and the echoes of Baldwin and Godfrey. Balian of Ibelin, the reluctant knight. When we first meet Balian, he is broken. A blacksmith in a French village, his wife dead by her own hand, his faith shattered. He has no crown, no destiny. He is a man without a future. And yet, through the course of a story, he is dragged into the machinery of history. His father, Godfrey of Ibelin, tells him, "Be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright that God may love thee. Speak the truth, always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong." It is the knight's oath. Words Balian does not yet understand, but will come to embody. By the time he faces Saladin, he has lived this creed. He has defended Jerusalem not for glory, not for conquest, but for the people. Farmers, women, children, those who had no sword to defend themselves. When he says, "I am the man in charge," it is the culmination of his arc. He is no longer a grieving blacksmith, no longer the bastard son of a forgotten knight. He is the embodiment of his father's words. A knight, in the truest sense,